You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 306th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 963rd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of August 31st, 2023. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes a shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred on Monday when Indiana posted a get-to-know-you social media video featuring freshman Mackenzie Mgbako. The final question in the video was, what can Hoosier Nation expect from you? And here is Mackenzie's reply.
A bucket. That's what they can expect, a walking bucket. Stay tuned, stay tuned.
A bucket, a walking bucket. It was a reminder to me of how rarely over the past 25 years Indiana has had truly versatile wing scoring on the roster. Guys who don't just specialize in one thing, but can score at multiple levels. I mean, when you think about it, it's a pretty short list. You could probably put Xavier Johnson on it if you wanted to, though he's really more of a distributor first than a scorer. And Al Durham could technically be included, though he had a clear ceiling on what he could accomplish as a scorer in the Big Ten. Prior to those guys, and in terms of actual NBA caliber scoring wings, you have to go back to Romeo in 2019, Victor Oladipo in 2013, and Eric Gordon in 2008. It's a pretty short list for a program with the expectations of Indiana, and it's hard to win at the highest levels without guys who are, to use Mackenzie's term, walking buckets. Now, will Mackenzie truly be a walking bucket as a freshman? Time will tell. But while so much time has been spent discussing the potentially awkward defensive fit of Mgbako, Renew, and Ware together, it's important to remember that our guys get to play offense too, and Mackenzie is going to provide an interesting challenge to opposing coaches. Put a smaller wing on him, and he's strong enough and skilled enough to play in the post. Put a bigger guy on him, and Mackenzie has the skills to drive. Leave him open from outside, and he profiles as a credible three-point shooter from day one. In other words, he has the potential to be a consistent scoring option even as a freshman because of the variety of skills he brings to the table. There's a reason why he was a 5-star McDonald's All-American, and there's a reason he consistently shows up in 2024 mock draft first rounds. If Mackenzie Mgbako can indeed be a walking bucket during his season in Bloomington, it will help to offset some of the concerns about Indiana's projected lack of consistent offense from its two-guard spot. And if Mackenzie can do that with the combo of Trey and CJ providing consistent scoring as well, now you've got an offense capable of being truly prolific and a team that could be quite dangerous come February and March. All right, now let me introduce my co-host this week. Andy and Coach are both off, and Ryan is here, and he's going to be here momentarily, but he's working on a story for the Big Lead. News broke about ESPN being pulled from Spectrum Cable, so he is working on that right now. So we will do our intro for Ryan here when he is ready. But here's what we have in store for you this week. We're going to run through some Hoosier headlines. Ryan will give you his opening thoughts. And then in segment 2, Eamonn Brennan is here to discuss IU, the Big Ten, and the college hoops landscape. Have always wanted to have Eamon on the show, and so it'll be great to have him here. And then we're going to kind of roll the mailbag in with questions for Eamon. So all of that is coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to Hoosier headlines, and I should let you know, if you hear lots of little voices in the background, my daughter has a bunch of friends over. And normally, like if it was a post-game show, I'd be a little bit more serious about, hey, don't make noise outside the door, but it's the middle of August. You got to pick your battles. So I'm just going to let them make noise. So if you hear the chatter of 4 young girls running around having fun playing together, that's them. I kind of apologize, but not really. Let's let them have fun. It's just the off season. So anyway, let's go. Let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Homefield Apparel, wear one for the team.
That's right. This edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all shows on the Back Home Network, presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. And it's not just Indiana. Home Field has something for everyone. I mean, no matter what college or university you're a fan of, or that you have a family member maybe that went to, Home Field is going to have something at their website for them. And it's not just t-shirts anymore. There's crew necks and hoodies and quarter zips and bomber jackets and hats. I mean, they just continue to expand their product line. And, you know, they continue to expand their outreach. I mean, one of the things I love about Home Field Apparel is the respect that they've always shown to the colleges and universities that, you know, they're putting their products out there. And I don't know if you saw on social media, but Nebraska last night, the women's volleyball team had over 90,000 people at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln to watch a volleyball match. And Home Field was there. They had gear printed for it. They were there to help celebrate it. It's what Home Field does, man. They celebrate the traditions of the colleges and universities in this country that are so special to so many of us, and they do it on high-quality materials. I mean, the stuff is comfortable. The colors last through many washings. It's just a great company. We love them. And Connor, the founder, he's actually going to be on Assembly Call Radio in a couple weeks. It'll be great to catch up with him, so look forward to that. But go to homefieldapparel.com. If you've never purchased from them, now's a great time to start. The promo code is HOME23. That gives you 15% off your first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, while we wait for Ryan to get here, let's just roll through a few Hoosier headlines here. Football season, obviously opening on Saturday. Indiana takes on Ohio State. I believe that tip is 3:30 on CBS, I believe. I did not write that down, but I believe that's where it is. I saw, obviously, I'm not going to be there at the game because I live in Texas, but I did see some people talking about, some of the parking is a little bit different this year. So I would make sure, go on social media, send a tweet to someone like Galen who's going to be there and kind of be on top of this stuff. If you have questions about parking, tailgating, any of that stuff. But big opener for the Hoosiers. I know a lot of us are not really sure how to feel about this season. Obviously, we're all, hopeful and want the team to do well, but just, it's really curious what's going to be out there. And Galen and the guys at Crimson Cast, Scott, also have done a great job, providing content to get you ready for the season. Also, Sammy and our friends over at Hoosier Huddle, doing the same thing. And so if you're looking to get hyped up for the game, go listen to their shows. I'm in the middle of Galen and Scott's big epic hour and 40-minute preview that they just posted early today. So looking to probably listen to that when I get done here. So anyway, big game coming on Saturday for Indiana. And obviously we haven't won since my dad was coaching in Indiana back in the 80s. That was the last time we beat Ohio State. So, kind of looking for a miracle here, but hopefully the team just plays well and there's something to build on for the games moving forward that are a little bit more winnable. On the basketball front, we are now on the cusp of some very big recruiting weekends, and we've been talking about these, but now they're here. I think everybody knows next week, Liam McNeely, Derek Queen, they will be on campus. That is, one of the bigger weekend visits I can remember, just because of how much the coaching staff has invested in the 2024 class and, how much it feels like Liam McNeely has kind of become the linchpin for that class. Everybody that you talk to, all the recruiting experts that you talk to, kind of say that Liam is, that Indiana is the clear favorite, right? Has emerged as a leader. Now, he was taking a visit to Kansas. He has another one scheduled to Texas, so nothing is set in stone. But it really does feel like that's one you lock him in, a consensus top 15 player. Now he can work on his teammate Derek Queen and Curtis Givens, their other teammate from Montverde, and some of the other guys that Indiana's going after. And if you don't get him, that's going to kind of set you back a little bit. So it's a huge recruiting weekend. That is next weekend. But this weekend is also a big recruiting weekend because Indiana, Mike Woodson and his staff, they have not just been laying groundwork and really going hard at the 2024 class. They've also done that with the 2025 class, and I know a lot of us, kind of lamented the fact that, hey, we really didn't pull a lot of guys from the freshman class in 2023 through their traditional recruiting calendar. Indiana had Ja'Kai Newton and Gabe Cupps, and of course they got Mackenzie Mgbako late, which, I guess we say that's not their traditional recruiting calendar, but it certainly is become a consistent part of Mike Woodson's recruiting attack to get a guy who decommits in April and bring them in. But part of the reason why they didn't get more of those commits during the traditional, kind of recruiting calendar in 2023 is I think they looked at the landscape, didn't see as many difference makers as they were hoping, and really kind of started investing more time in 2024 and 2025, which is going to set you back for the 2023 class. But if it pays off in these next two recruiting classes, then I think everybody can look at it as a net positive. So coming in this weekend are a trio of big-time prospects from the 2025 class: Jalen Harrelson, Malachi Moreno, and Darius Adams. Jalen and Darius, I believe, are going to be teammates at LaLu. Coming up, Malachi Moreno, a top 50 big man. So all of those guys, I presume they will be at the game on Saturday. But a big recruiting weekend for those players that Indiana's trying to, continue to build relationships with. And then we'll have a lot more on the big recruiting weekend that's coming up with Liam, Derek Queen, and others after that. But big things happening. It's kind of one of those things we've been talking about it. It's kind of felt like it's out in the future a little bit, and now it's here. And, I think now we're getting to the point where you need to start seeing some commitments. Not right away, but as October rolls into the early signing period in November, you want to start to see some of this work that the staff has put in start to bear fruit in terms of commitments. Other Hoosier headlines for this week: Romeo Langford has agreed to an Exhibit 10 contract with the Utah Jazz. So nice to see him, get another chance. And that guarantees nothing, but it gives him an opportunity. Danny Ainge, now the GM with the Utah Jazz, he obviously was with Boston when Romeo was drafted at the back end of the lottery there. So Danny Ainge clearly still sees something in Romeo that he likes. So we wish Romeo well. And then Hoosiers for Good, our friends at Hoosiers for Good, announced that all 12 men's basketball players are part of their latest NIL class. And so you can go check that out. They put out a nice video, kind of showing all the different charities that they work with. And so if you want to support Hoosiers for Good and Hoosiers Connect, go to HoosiersConnect.com to support IUNIL. We're going to be doing a lot more with them moving forward. But they've really, opened up some different channels, some different avenues to where, charities can go work, businesses can go work, big-time donors can donate there, but they also, want some of the smaller-time donors. I mean, $20, $50, $100, it all adds up. It all matters. And even those of us who don't have a ton of money to put in, but, can give our little bits here and there, it all adds up. And so that is something else to think about there with Hoosiers for Good. But, ladies and gentlemen, now here with us, here ready to talk Indiana basketball, I believe. He is a senior writer for The Big Lead. He's a proud alumnus of the Indiana Daily Student, and he is a man who is geared up for another season of cheering on his Los Angeles Chargers.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
No, still not going to claim the Chargers. I know.
How is that funny, Jared? It's
funny. It's a deep cut. It's a deep cut. I will say this, though. I would much rather the Chicago White Sox have hired you than Chris Getz. Can I just put that out there? Someone new, a new perspective.
Yeah. Hey, same complaints I made about the Padres this week.
I know.
By the way.
Give me your opening thoughts, and then we'll get to Eamon.
Well, first of all, you brought up the Chargers, so I got to say, they released the Forbes valuations of franchises this year. A team in the nation's second biggest media market is now 25th in team value among the 32 NFL teams. So, real great move there, guys. You think you're going to move to LA and be top 5, and guess what? They were 22nd.
If only someone had seen that coming before it happened.
In San Diego, by the way, last year in San Diego, they were 22nd most valuable franchise, and now they are 25th. So I was right. That's all we're just going to stick with. Yeah, by the way, apologies to anybody who has Spectrum cable or internet. You can no longer watch ESPN or probably your local ABC affiliate, FX, Disney Channel, anything related to Disney. Apparently, Disney called Spectrum's bluff. So they are in a dispute over rights fees, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. So you might want to try, and I would never advocate for an illegal stream of something. Ever. Never. But find a way to watch.
The assembly calls on tonight. You don't need
but
to worry
I know
about
I just mean in the future. Like if you need to
yes.
watch something this weekend, there's college football, again, would never advocate for using the internet as a tool to watch something illegally, ever.
No.
But you do need to figure out a way to do that. And however you do, that's fine. But don't say I told you and just covering my ass here, guys.
Any thoughts on IU sports?
Yeah, I would say interested to see what happens this weekend with football. And the recruiting weekend next weekend is the biggest thing. And I know we're going to have a show before then, but still, I think the gearing up for that is kind of where everybody's at right now. And it's
as big a recruiting weekend as I can remember.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you could go back a long, long way too. Yeah, was it like Charlie Villanueva and Luol Deng coming to town in like the early 2000s? I mean,
we don't want those vibes.
for an official visit, I mean, they've had great collections of talent on campus before, but as far as like an official visit with guys you have a chance with,
yes.
This is as big as it's been in a long time. Usually they spread those out a little, or they have a commit in town with a guy they're looking at or something like that. These are two guys looking for the commitments. And I was typing, but I heard you say, I mean, a lot of people do think that Indiana is the team to beat for McNeely. So, that's a huge, huge weekend. And he has a visit lined up afterwards. So you'd love to get him last. It just worked out this way. And Derek Queen, it seems like there are a couple teams firmly in the mix, and IU's right there with the rest of them. And you hope to get one, and maybe the domino falls on the next guy.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on here, and let's pick the brain of a special guest who has a unique view on Indiana's place in the college basketball landscape. It is Eamonn Brennan. We are going to talk to him next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Eamon, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, there he is.
Let me get my full head in frame there. My laptop. So normally I do this from my desktop computer, but I'm having normally I do it from my laptop, but I'm having some issues getting my mic to work. So I just put my phone propped up here.
It works.
It sounds good. It looks good.
Yeah, you're
good.
good.
As long as it looks and sounds okay, it should be all right. But just want to let you know.
How you been, buddy?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
Good. For those who don't know, Eamon and I worked together at the IDS back in the day in college. He was my sports editor my senior year.
Yeah, it's true. True. Way back in the day.
Yeah. In fact, it depresses me how long that's been.
Yeah, it's what is it now? 16 years since I graduated college.
You were 07. Yeah. So it's
very long time.
That means it was even longer for me. I'm not even going to do that. But
what was Ryan like to work with?
Very easy. The thing about the college paper is that, particularly at the Indiana Daily Student at the time, is that a lot of people want to write about sports, and the number of them that want to do it is greater than the number who can actually do it. Yeah. But you want to encourage people, you want to coach people, and you want to be helpful as much as possible. And it is always a relief when you just have someone who can just write and do a good job. Actually, a guy who works for the Ringer now, Matt Dollinger. I was the editor-in-chief of the paper one of the summers.
It was the summer before my senior year,
Yeah, and he's from Bloomington originally. He just walked in the summer because he was home for the summer, and he was transferring to Indiana from Mizzou. And he was like, "Hey, can I help?" And I was like, "Yeah, can you send me a couple writing samples and just write me a story about, whatever Indiana basketball, just write me something." And he wrote it. I was like, "Oh God." Thank God.
Well, and he wound up doing everything at the paper, working in Bloomington, and now he's gone on to have a great career.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
We were there at a good time.
We
were there at a good time. There were a lot of very good writers when we were there. You were one. You were one of them. I remember when you were a sophomore, Mac Linesk, who's at the Indy Star, he was leaving, and he was a year ahead of me. I mean, we're about the same age, but I was older. And I said, so, he got to read everybody's stuff every day, and I'd read some stuff in the paper, and he said to me, or I asked him, I'm like, "Oh, so who's the next wave?" Kind of jokingly, and he's like, we got like 3 kids, but he's like, Eamon Brennan's going to be a star. And I was like, I started reading your stuff and I was like, that's the guy. That's the next guy. And then, Zach came after you and Dollinger as well. I mean, it was a really good roster of people.
For sure.
I feel like
the
there
paper
always
was
is
great
there,
back then. That's the thing about I don't
Mhm.
know. I think it's I read the Daily Student every now and again, and when I see it, and I think the folks there are doing a really great job. But it was a different time and like a very different sort of business model for the paper. And if you remember when we were in school, like everybody picked up the paper on the way to school, and the ad business was really strong, and so we had a big paper every day of the week.
I mean, it felt like it was as big as the Herald Times at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
It really
for
did.
Sure it was. Yeah. And the ad stuff was, you'd have Buffalo's or whatever doing a full page ad buy like
different
every
time.
day.
Different time in the business, man.
Very different time, for sure.
And I will say, and I've said this to a lot of people, it's probably the most professional newsroom I've ever been in. And I worked at several papers. I mean, legitimate, because everybody really wanted to be there. They weren't there for the paycheck. They were there because they really wanted to be there, and they all took it very seriously. And it was a lot of fun. So, all right, memory lane.
Giving hard edits. Yeah.
Yeah. Memory lane.
Memory lane's always fun.
I know.
How are you on time, Eamon? If we go like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, is that good?
Yeah, I got plenty of time.
Okay.
All good.
Awesome.
Kids are in bed. I'm good.
Nice. Mine are not. So you may hear the voices of children in the background here behind me. But it's the summer, so it is okay. We'll crack the whip more during November and December.
For sure.
There's actual games. Okay. Let's hit this and we'll hop into segment 2. Here we go.
Hey, it's Romeo Langford. What's the only thing better than hitting a game winner to beat Wisconsin? Celebrate it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
The only thing better would be hitting a game winner to win at Wisconsin, a streak that desperately needs to end, hopefully as soon as this season. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris. I'm here with Ryan Phillips, and we are very excited to be joined by a special guest, and that is Eamon Brennan. Eamon went to IU, where he became editor of the IDS. He and Ryan were just reminiscing here between segments about their time there. Then Eamon founded Inside the Hall with Alex Bozich and Ryan Carrazza, and then went on to cover college shoots for ESPN and The Athletic, and just recently launched his own Substack Buzzer, which you can learn more about and subscribe to at substack.com/Eamon Brennan. I highly recommend it. I am a subscriber. It is excellent stuff, and we are very excited to have Eamon here with us. His debut appearance on the Assembly Call, I think. I don't think you've been on the Assembly Call before, have you?
No, I don't think so. No,
I don't believe so. So
I'm
awesome to have you.
Very happy to be here. Yeah, thank you.
He's been dodging us for 12 years. It's fine.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, I had to work with Ryan back in college. I'm not going on the show now. I'm done with him.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are things going with the Substack? I mean, I read, kind of your most recent one where you gave a little update on it, and as someone who has worked with newsletters and helps people who are building newsletters, I love just the mindset of appreciation and gratitude that you had with that email. But how's it going with Substack so far?
Honestly, it's been really good. I mean, I think there's a small part of you that the night before you hit publish on the first post is thinking, there's who knows? You never know. Maybe I'll have 50,000 subscribers tomorrow. Maybe. And that didn't happen. But what did happen is that hundreds of people signed up. And in the first 2 months, particularly, we're at the 2-month mark now, basically. There's been a really good response. A community is building.
Awesome.
The number of subscribers has steadily gone up. And we're now to the point where, having launched in the absolute death of the college basketball offseason, I'm looking at the start of the season coming up and the entirety of the season. And obviously I do Bubble Watch, which is a big feature that people seek out, and that got a lot of people to sign up to the Athletics college basketball thing when I started over there. That sort of gradual process of people finding out where you are, I feel like that is now happening at a level where after the first few weeks, it's is this thing gonna work? Do I need to find another just another media job. Like, what am I going to do here? And I feel like where we are after 2 months, I'm like very encouraged about the general direction of where it's going to go and what the growth opportunities are. And it's been really, really good. I've had people reach out asking to like write for the site, which I want to be
Wow.
like, please don't give me your work for free or whatever. Like, let's not do that. But there's definitely been a really good little cadre of commenters and subscribers that are like really into it, and it's building, and it's been very exciting so far.
That's got to be super gratifying too, because you're kind of going out on your own, kind of as you said, sort of jumping into the void, and to have people respond to it has to feel great. I mean, we all three of us here have started things out of nowhere previously a long time ago, and you never know if anyone's ever going to read it. And it's, I mean, for those who don't know, Eamon's worked at ESPN's, Yahoo Sports. You worked at Fan House, I think, too, way back in the day.
In the day, yeah.
Yeah. So, and The Athletic, and you've kind of hit all these stops along the way. It's, you're somebody whose opinion is valued in the industry. So being able to go out on your own and do that and have people continue to respond to it's got to be pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, it is gratifying, and every subscription you're like, awesome, way to go, like get on board, like let's go. And every email sign up, you're just like, yeah, fantastic. Like, I think the thing that's really good about it, and the way the business model is encouraging to me, is that like I saw the numbers at The Athletic. They're very numbers. It's a very numbers focused company, and they share all the metrics with you, so you can kind of see as a writer what's working, what's not, and they kind of nudge you towards what maybe is. And so you come into this now with that understanding, while also all of it is coming to you, and there isn't this huge infrastructure that's helping you get subs, but you don't need that many. You just need a small number of people to kick you a few bucks every month, and you've got a viable business on your hands. So it's a really exciting model. It's been really fun so far, and I feel like particularly gratifying is people who are on board, even though I've been very open about the fact that like I'm figuring it out on the fly, and I don't know what it's going to eventually look like. I don't have a content plan for the next 2 years or whatever, but we'll get there. And in the meantime, it's been really, really fun and super exciting.
Awesome. Like Kevin Kelly said, find your 1,000 true fans, and you can build a fulfilling career around them. Well, that's great, man. I'm excited to hear that it's going well, and we of course will continue sending people your way. And anybody else who, like me, is a big Indiana fan but also likes to pay attention to the Virginia basketball program, that's right in the wheelhouse of your newsletter.
You and Virginia, man.
The Virginia fans, I will say, they were among my biggest, because I did a lot of local. When I first came to The Athletic, I did a lot of local DC stuff, because I'm out here in DC, and that was the national title year. Was the kind of the first full year I wrote college basketball at The Athletic, and so I followed them that whole year and did their whole national title stuff, and so
it's a great season.
Kind of covered them locally.
Did you go to Charlottesville for games and stuff too?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I did, a lot last year, even, even though they were 2 years, the years they've been bad, like I still go because it's like 2 hour. It's like a 2 hour drive. I like going down there, and it's usually worth a while. And Virginia fans love to read about their program, and they are diehards. It's good. And so there are a lot of people have signed up that are Virginia fans specifically. And then, it's funny. It's going to be like a national college basketball site that's going to have a little bit of Virginia content, that probably more than some other programs, just because, that's who people are reaching out being like, please do the same Virginia stuff you're doing at The Athletic. And I'm not going to turn them down. So, yeah.
I'll appreciate reading those posts. So keep them coming.
Yeah. Jared definitely has a man crush on Tony.
They're my adopted second team. I'm a big Tony Bennett fan.
That's fair enough.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the Hoosiers. That's what people are here for. And like I said, I mean, you've got a unique perspective on them, from your time, covering Indiana, but then also now, kind of having the national perspective for, 10, 15 years, however long it's been. And it's really why I wanted to have you on the show. Because, I mean, we obviously hyper-focus on Indiana and know the players really well and know everything that's going on with Indiana. Where I think sometimes we might fall a little bit short is understanding where Indiana fits in the national context of college basketball. We know what our expectations are. We know what we'd like it to be. But at any given moment, it's not always kind of clear what that is. And so I'm kind of curious to get your perspective right now, here in Mike Woodson's third offseason. Where does Indiana fit in the college basketball landscape right now? Like, what is Indiana's place? Where do you see it?
I would say Indiana is a top 20 program, or should be on a regular basis. I think, I think if you strip away everything and you look at, I think the Maryland conversation is an interesting one in this regard too, because people look at Maryland, or Texas is another good one. People look at those programs and they see the resources, they see the local area, they see the ability to recruit there, and those are really good jobs. I think most college basketball coaches would consider Texas like a top 5 job, partially because they're not going to like run you out of town if you have 3 or 4 okay seasons.
Yet at the
you know
same
what I mean?
time, the money's still there.
You get a fair amount of leash with Texas fans because they barely notice they have a basketball program until late February. But I think Indiana nationally at this point is should be a top 20 program every year, should compete at that level. And the fact that it hasn't for a pretty long time, with exceptions, it's been mostly an exception. Good years under Tom Crean, none under Archie, really. I was about to say good years under Archie, but really none.
Yes,
I think that everybody has a lot of respect for Indiana as a program and feels like it should probably be better than it has been for the last 20 years, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What do you think it'll take then to kind of take those next steps? And, obviously Indiana fans, we consider Indiana a blue blood and want to be competing for Final Fours and, doing all that stuff. And, Mike Woodson, Alex put this on his recruiting story this week. He was kind of recounting what Mike Woodson had said when he first took over recruiting wise, which is, his assistants basically kind of said, we can't really go after these guys, at the top of the list. And Mike Woodson said, no, we're Indiana. We're going to go after these guys, which is what they've done in 24 and 25. And we'll have to see now if they can land them. And I guess that's the question. Is that what it's going to take, is kind of landing these classes and, winning big on the biggest stages to get Indiana back to stature-wise what we think it should be?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's also a weird time in college basketball where you'd love to get, 1 or 2 of the top 10 players or top 20 players every year, but that's not a guarantee of success. You can put together an incredible recruiting class and still be kind of average. Duke last year was kind of average. And granted, it was John Shire's first year as a coach and they had some injuries and whatever. And by the end of the year, they looked like a really good team. But it's not 2012 anymore where, Calipari's got this thing rolling and he's got, 10 incredible freshmen lined up every year or whatever. The best teams are old now. And so you want to recruit well at the top end, but I think you need to recruit well at every tier of player, and you need to find guys that fit your system, and you have to have a clear idea of what you want to do, and you have to line in, you have to layer in guys who are going to fit, and you have to be able to then once your 4-star number 56th ranked recruit doesn't play a lot freshman year and transfers to Davidson, you have to then find another guy who can shoot at a 40% clip in the transfer portal and get him on board and up to speed right away. And I think Woodson's done a pretty good job of balancing these sorts of things. It's roster building at the end of the day. And at the NBA level, these guys do it all the time. So it's not like the end of the world. I feel like actually Mike Woodson is relatively well built for this particular moment in college basketball history where, maybe 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, you'd maybe be looking for a guy who's going to grind young players, develop them, get some 3-star guys that are going to take off. And that's not I'm not saying he can't do that, but right now in 2023, like you can get a team pretty good in a pretty short space of time. Like some programs do this every year just because their coaches are like weirdos and they think it's fun. Like Arkansas. Like Musselman is like
everybody was thinking
He loves
Arkansas.
hitting the reset button. Yeah,
he just loved. I mean, I remember talking to Dan Bernstein, who's a radio host in Chicago, and he used to cover Muss when he was in the CBA. And like he was like a low-level radio reporter guy. He used to go to his press conferences before every CBA game or whatever. And Musselman used to announce the guys that he picked up and dropped from his CBA team every day. Like every day he would have like 3 or 4 guys that he brought onto the roster because he wanted to play around with them some more. And so he's happy doing that every year. And they've been pretty good, Arkansas, the last 4 or 5 years. And sometimes in the beginning of the season, they look a little weird. And by January, you're like, oh, Musselman's got a really good team here. So it is possible to do that now. And so you don't necessarily, to circle all the way back, you don't necessarily need to be super locked in on, we got to have a top 5 class every year. We're Indiana. We need to be, yes, get talented players, get them wherever you can, but get them wherever you can and make sure they fit. If you have a guy like Trace Jackson Davis, make sure you have a bunch of guys around him who can shoot, who can play, make off the dribble. I think they did a really nice job last year of building a team that made sense around him. And I think that's what you have to do. Get good players on campus, but have an idea of what you want to do and layer them in at every tier of the recruiting process.
We've talked a lot here about Mike Woodson. It seems like behind the scenes in the program, he's doing a lot of really good things with getting guys confidence and being a mentor and all of that stuff. But we've talked about the on-court stuff and how sometimes it doesn't work, the transition from NBA to college basketball, because they are different games with different priorities. I'm wondering what you've seen from him. I mean, obviously the offense has been kind of old school because it's been centered around a post player for his entire time here. I'm wondering what you've seen and if there are things you like about him coaching wise, and if there's anything you have seen sort of on the court that you didn't really respond to, since you cover it nationally, sort of comparatively to what else is going on in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's probably been times where like I've been on a group thread with Indiana buddies where we've been like, what's happening with this?
We have a similar experience.
Yeah, like what are we doing with this after timeout here? What was that call? But generally speaking, I feel like Indiana runs good stuff. It's not, is he reinventing the wheel? No. Like he's not coming up with some crazy new 5-out system, that some random Canadian developmental coach came up with and is now like becoming like a hot trendy thing. That's not what they're doing. But he's running stuff that makes sense, that works in the NBA, pick and roll, space the floor. And if you put talented players in that context, like we saw last year, you have Jalen Hood-Schifino playing pick and roll, hitting every 15-footer he sees, at Purdue. That works. So, like, get good players and put them in competent positions to succeed, and you're fine. You don't need to be the world's greatest, most dialed-in tactician if you have talented players. And, hell, like, was Roy Williams the world's greatest tactician? I feel like he got a little bit more, negative attention for like rolling the balls out than he deserved. But he would be the first person to tell you, like, this, we don't run hard stuff. Like we're North Carolina. We get all the best players in the country. And then we tell them to run up and down the floor really fast and go score the ball. And
it's
so
just the dedication to it that was the difference. Yeah,
it's just that we do that every possession. As long as guys are hustling, I have no problem. That's basically Roy's whole thing. You don't need to be crazy, hyper, like we're going to run every play and I need to call every single set or whatever. If you have good players and you have them in the right sort of positions and you have them spaced well enough and guys can make shots. And I feel like last year was a great example of sort of that mindset paying dividends. And I feel like it's a totally workable one. I think that I think the thing about college basketball is that there are guys who are just total savant, genius level coaches who make that like are unfair basically for like 30 years. Like Bill Self is one, right? Like, yeah. If you have Bill Self coaching your program, you're going to be good every year. You're going to recruit really good players, but you're also just going to have the best in-game tactician that there is in the business. And you watch some of the stuff he runs, and it's just crazy. Rick Pitino was one. Like, for all of his self-destructive tendencies, he was
The man could
as
coach.
an incredible coach, and still is, right? St. John's is going to be really good this year, I promise you. Like, in no time flat. And so is Mike Woodson that? I don't think so. Do I think he needs to be? Not necessarily. Would you like to get that guy eventually down the road where you just feel like, oh my God, we have one of the best coaches in college basketball, and he's not leaving anytime soon? You'd love to get that guy because Indiana fans grew up with that guy. That was their entire existence as basketball fans. But it's very difficult to do twice in one program's history. I think maybe North Carolina is the only place that's ever done it.
Yep.
So it's easier said than done. Indiana, I think, is Woodson that? No, he's very competent, and maybe down the line, 5-10 years, you find that guy again. But it's much easier, like I said, much easier said than done.
What you just said is exactly why Indiana fans are so attached to the idea of Brad Stevens still to this day, is because they want that guy who's never going to leave and is, has a reputation as such a good coach. Even to this day, you've got another coach, you've moved on. He's an executive in the NBA now and has expressed no interest in returning to coaching. And people,
he wants to sit in an office all day, and
people will ask me.
On the floor. Yeah.
I will get DMs all the time.
I haven't even heard that name in probably a year now.
I get
really?
it. Probably, you know what? When Indiana loses, I get that. It's somebody just like so.
All bets are off when Indiana loses. Nothing counts
Woodson's
for the
cooked,
24 hours
Brad
after
Stevens,
you
right?
lost.
Like Brad will be away from coaching. He'll want it again. I'm like, I don't think Brad ever wants to coach again, quite frankly. But yeah, especially not in college.
Well, you don't have to travel and you don't have to recruit what he's doing.
Yeah,
right now.
you play 85. You do 85 to 110 games or whatever, 100 games a year, and you have to travel half the time. You don't have to recruit. You don't have to deal with boosters. He even complained about that at Butler. I mean, imagine at Indiana dealing with all of that political stuff.
Yeah.
So let's turn our attention to this year's team, Eamon, because there's no question. You kind of alluded to this. There's no question. There's a lot of talent on this roster. There are some questions about how that talent fits and if they have talent in all the places that they need it. So I'm curious how you're kind of rating and looking at this Indiana team and what your expectations are, or what you think are fair expectations for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think top 30, top 35 level team is probably about right. I mean, I think the guys that you're most excited about are young, probably. Or slightly unproven, like Khalil Ware looks extremely talented, a little unproven. Mgbako, obviously, super talented, but you never know with freshmen. And I think the guard spots are a little light. I don't have like a super locked in or a super what's the word? Mind-blowing hot take on Indiana. I feel like Xavier Johnson is a really good guard that's going to have to do a ton because there isn't a lot of other guard depth necessarily there that I see. But you look up and down, like I'm excited for Malik Renew. I feel like he's going to have a really good season.
We do too.
If Trey Galloway can shoot the ball from three at like a 31% clip, then he's going to be a really good college player. He already is, I think, a really good college player with his activity and his motor and getting at the rim and stuff. He just one more thing, which is just be a jump shooter a little bit. But deeper than that, I don't think there's a ton of proven guard depth. And so that's the big question for me. But I think it's a team that has a lot of potential and has a really high ceiling. I don't think the floor is particularly low either, but it's all right. Like I'm excited to see how they turn out.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned ceiling. So I got some questions from our community members, told them you were going to be on the show. And so I'll sprinkle some of those in here as we go. But the first question that we got was from Matt, who said, get him on the record for what he believes Indiana's ceiling is for the upcoming season. So how would you define that ceiling? Like, what do you think is reasonably, as high as this team can go if everything goes well?
Man, I would probably say, it's, get into the tournament as a single digit seed and then you kind of go from there. Like, do I think they're going to win the Big Ten? No. Like Purdue's probably going to win the Big Ten, or Michigan State maybe.
Yeah.
But I think the odds of Indiana getting into the tournament probably pretty good. And I think once you get there, particularly if you're not a bubble team, your chances of getting to the Sweet 16, particularly with a slightly younger group, are pretty good. And like, you have a chance, you have talent, you have, as long as Xavier Johnson stays healthy and he has the ball in his hands, like the ceiling is get into the tournament and see how it goes, which I know is like a very milquetoast thing, but that's always how it is. It's like you win random games in the tournament, you lose random games in the tournament. You never know how it's going to go. Like 2 years ago, Indiana, like, got into the first four or whatever, and then got sent to the West Coast to play St. Mary's 2 nights later and got absolutely smoked.
There's so much luck involved and matchups, and yeah,
that's how it goes. So ceiling wise, I'm not going to give you like a specific round. Like, this is a potential Elite Eight team. Like, who knows? Maybe, but just get into the tournament as a single digit seed, even if it's an 8-9 seed, whatever, and see how you do.
As we look at the Big Ten, you mentioned Michigan State and Purdue. They're the clear favorites, I think, in the conference. And then Indiana's kind of in that next group of, kind of a bunch of teams where they've got a lot of question marks, but a lot of talent. No one's quite sure what to expect. I'm curious, as you look at the Big Ten, what teams do you feel strongest about in either direction? Like, you kind of feel like you're maybe stronger than the consensus this team's going to be better, or maybe a little more pessimistic than most?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is, again, a very mediocre thing. But I feel like Purdue's going to be even better than people are saying. I feel like Purdue has a chance to be like midway through the season, having not lost a game, looking like incredibly good. You're basically taking last year's team with Zach Edey back, maybe slightly better based on what Matt Painter has been saying, and those guards not being freshmen anymore. And I think that's just a big thing, like Braden Smith and Foster Loyer not being freshmen and not being quite as easy to physically bully a little bit as they were last year. I think Purdue has a chance to be like, oh my God, these guys need to win the national title type of team, like midway through, January or whatever. I think Maryland is going to be better than people think. I think Maryland is a really, really good team. Brought key guys back. And I think Kevin Willard is a super underrated coach. I think at Seton Hall, it was very easy to kind of look at him and be like, yeah, they're pretty good every year, whatever. But without the context of Seton Hall is a very difficult place to be good. Their gym, their practice gym is literally like a Catholic school, grade school gym. They're like, I grew up in playing in Iowa. Like, the ceiling is like yay high. Like, it's not, the facilities are not great. And you have to recruit a certain type of kid and be a very like intense figure, which is why I think they made a good hire with Shaheen Holloway too. But Kevin Willard did a really nice job there, and putting him into the Maryland job with the resources that Maryland has is like, I feel like they're going to be good for a while. And I feel like they're going to be much better even next year than a lot of people are expecting.
Yeah, Eamon, actually, we sat down in San Diego, not this past tournament, but the one before. He was in town, and he actually told me that Willard was a great hire for Maryland for all of those reasons, that it's really difficult to win at Seton Hall. So he holds true to that opinion.
I do.
We had Brian was booing you during your positive comments about Purdue. So if you're losing subscribers here.
I'm sorry. I have to be.
He's a national reporter, guys. Come on.
Let me ask you this, and I mean, you probably are one of the most qualified people to answer this question. Inevitably, there are going to be comparisons between Purdue and Virginia from 2019 because Virginia lost to a 16 seed. Purdue now the only other team to do that. Do you see similarities between that team that Virginia had coming back that then ended up going on and winning the national championship? Because to me, that team was loaded with 4 guys who played in the NBA, and this Purdue team doesn't quite seem like that. But are there other things there that you think are similar that could, help propel Purdue to go further than they did last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I see a lot of similarities. I mean, you step back and look at it, it's like well-liked coach who hasn't had as much tournament success as his regular season success would dictate. Questions about the style of play. In Virginia's case, like they're too slow. They play this pack line defense. You can shoot over the top of them. In Purdue's case, their best player is always a big guy, whatever. And I feel like there is, Virginia went through that season just constantly talking about it, constantly being reminded of it. Every single post-game press conference, it was like, how does this, blah, 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 relate to the fact that you guys got beat by UMBC? And so they just became so inured to the fact that this happened to them, and so totally like okay with it, that I feel like once they got into the following tournament, they were able to play, with the exception of the very first game in that tournament where they trailed by at halftime to, I think, UNC Greensboro. And I was at that game. And it was like, oh my God, this is going to happen again. These guys, that's when they were like, they all admitted after the fact, like, we were terrified. Imagine doing that twice. But, once they got past that, they blew them out in the second half. And then every other game, it was just like, what's the worst thing that can happen to us now? Nothing bad.
You get that monkey off your back. And
compared to last year, nothing bad is going to happen to us. And you throw the dice out and see how it goes. And you look back at their tournament run and you see the total crazy crapshoot of the NCAA tournament. Just the number of games they won close. The title game was in overtime. The game against Auburn when they need that call on Kyle Guy to get those 3 free throws. Yep. I mean, this is the NCAA tournament. And any one of those stages, the Purdue game, like they could have lost in the Elite Eight to Purdue very easily in Louisville, except for that Mama Diakite shot that was, to tie the game in regulation. Like, so I feel like once you go through something like that as a team and it's super embarrassing and you spend all season thinking about it and they're going to spend plenty of time talking about it, already have. Matt Painter's already talking about it. I just feel like you get something put in you where it's just like the thing that crushes teams in the tournament and the thing that crushed Purdue last year was like, oh my God, what if we lose this? What if we lose right now? We're going to lose. Oh my God, what if we lose? If you can get all those thoughts out of your head and just play and you're the better team, you're going to win by 30. And so that's the thing that I think gives them an advantage, is like having gone through that, you'll be better. I also think, like I said, their guards are not freshmen anymore. They're not going to hit a wall the same way they did this past year. They're not going to be as easily to physically bully. They're going to be better. And guard play is what you need in the tournament as well, because we saw against Fairleigh Dickinson, you can chuck the ball down to Zach Edey, but if he's got 5 guys around him and no one else can make a shot, you're done. You're dead in the water. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that loss also spurred Tony Bennett to make a few changes at Virginia. He changed the offense. He threw in a whole nother offense that they ran alongside their traditional mover blocker stuff. And he got Kihei Clark, who, whatever you think about his career at Virginia, was able to put pressure on the ball in a way that Tony Bennett's players traditionally didn't do. And so they made 2 big changes that made them a more effective team. And Matt Painter's talking about doing that. I just think there's a lot that, like, it makes you better. It makes you stronger. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Purdue look like a much more complete, focused team, even though they're going to have to deal with, like, remember when you guys lost to Fairleigh Dickinson basically all year.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that Virginia run, because that was a crazy amount of like close games and things that happened and things that just worked out in their favor. It was almost the exact opposite of the year before. And I always try and say this to people, like, you can run the tournament, the exact same tournament bracket 1,000 times and you'll probably get 950 different brackets, because it is just so much about these little things that it doesn't matter what your seed is and whatever. After a certain point, there's so much that goes on and so many matchups that, work for you, work against you, or somebody gets hot, somebody sprains an ankle, whatever, that just can change it. So once you get in the tournament, you're right. Once you get to the Sweet 16, all right, now let's knuckle down and try and win games normally. But just to get there is so dependent on where you wind up.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, it's the ultimate crapshoot, and everybody can win or everybody, coaches, programs, whatever, can't win in the tournament, and then they do. Yeah. Like Villanova shot too many threes, and that's why they kept losing in the first weekend of the tournament. And then, they win 2 national titles in 4 years, whatever. Like Gonzaga used to. I mean, they haven't won a national title yet, but they've been to a bunch of Final Fours now. They've been to 2 national title games. They were a bucket away against Carolina. Like,
It's going to happen eventually.
there's all that. Yeah, it's going to happen. And Purdue's the same way. Like, Virginia was the same way. They had horrible, even down to the terrible elite, like heartbreaking Elite Eight loss that they took to Syracuse that year, when they had Malcolm Brogdon's senior year. They were up by like 20. They should have won that game. And Syracuse started zone pressing, and Virginia just melted down. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with a lot of these teams where you're like, there's all these takes about how X, Y, and Z can't win in the tournament, and Virginia style can't win in the tournament. And then you just get enough talented guys on the floor, and you make shots in the tournament when it matters, and you win a national title. It's just how it works.
The other thing I want to get your perspective on tonight, because, just reading you on the buzzer, I think you've had a lot of interesting things to say about it, is everything that's happening in the college sports landscape with conference realignment and where college basketball fits in there. Because we all know that it's driven by football, and yet, college basketball still drives money and has obviously a very big, entertainment property at the end of the year there with March Madness. What are your thoughts on kind of how all this is going to affect college basketball and, especially a school like Indiana that is much more basketball focused than football? What are some things that we should all be kind of watching out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think long term, you'd be mildly concerned as an Indiana fan if it becomes like college football is literally the only thing that matters. The Big Ten's largesse has been a boon to Indiana. I mean, I remember when I was in school, they were sitting down with one of the administrators, because I wrote some dumb college kid column about like, why can't we have a student section like Michigan State's? It's all, everybody wraps around the court, whatever. And he's like, do you know how much people pay to sit down there? Like, how much these boosters pay us to sit, close, in the first 5 rows, and they've been paying it for 50 years or whatever. We're going to kick them out. So you paying $150 can sit down there. Like, there's no chance. Like, he's like, do you know how much money Michigan makes on a football Saturday? It's like $4 million. Do you know how much we make all of basketball season? That. So like, Indiana getting a bunch of money from the Big Ten network has been a huge boon, because it wasn't able to compete resource-wise with the schools like Michigan and Ohio State, who create all this money from football revenue, even beyond the TV stuff.
Well, you've seen that in the facility upgrades that have been coming in waves over the last 5 to 10 years. Everywhere, every sport has had their place, their field or their arena redone. I mean,
yes, for
that's
sure.
why.
Yeah, and so broadly speaking, I think whatever the individual reasons for why things are happening, like, oh, Arizona, we need to go to the Big 12 because of whatever, or Colorado, or obviously Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA are going to get more money for being in the Big Ten. I just think that my general takeaway is that the desire to increase your marginal revenue from TV has kind of overridden the traditional reasons why people care about college sports. It's not because it's the NFL or the NBA where you've just got franchises kind of peppered around the country. It's because people care about Oregon State playing Oregon, and they care about Washington State playing Washington. I don't really care about that. I'm from Iowa, but people in Washington and Oregon care about that a lot. And so, like, to just peace, we're out, we're going to the Big Ten, and maybe we'll work something out, maybe we won't. Like, we've seen it in small amounts throughout, over the last like 30 years, but you don't really see it in sort of the naked way that we've seen over the last like 2 months. And I think that the ACC is probably next, because that conference doesn't make a lot of sense as it's currently constructed. It's basically a basketball league with a few football programs in it that want to be like big time SEC level football programs.
We'll just wait till they get Stanford, Cal, and SMU, and it'll make a lot more sense.
Game changers, baby. Game changers.
Yes. Yeah. Broadly, my takeaway is that, like, you can always rationalize whatever individual decision, but then you stop and take a step back over the last like 2 months and you look at where we are, and it's just like, this is not really why a lot of people get into college athletics in the first place. Rivalry, regionality, quirky little stuff on campus. That's why people
too.
care. Yeah, familiarity. The fact that, you know, you work in Portland and your, you know, cubicle mate is a Oregon State fan and you're an Oregon fan and you both know exactly what that means to the other person. All of that stuff matters and is kind of what makes college sports good in the first place. And without it, you know, imagine Indiana and Purdue being in a different conference. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. No, I was one thing that comes up out here, and I've talked to some parents of kids who are going to college at USC and UCLA. They won't be able to drive to their games anymore. They used to be able to drive to every game and see their kid play every game. Now they got to fly across the country to see half their games. And I honestly think that the first move that made absolutely no sense was the Big Ten adding Maryland and Rutgers, because it wasn't regional anymore. And it was, I get why they did that. There's a revenue reason why they did that. And dollars and cents wise, you can start to rationalize that. But from then on, conferences didn't make sense. The Big Ten was the Midwest Conference. The Pac-10 was the West Coast. ACC, Atlantic, it's in the name. And now they got teams on the Pacific. They're going to have teams on the Pacific. The Big 12 was like the, you know, Southland. Like, it just made sense. And now it doesn't. And you're right when you compare it to the NFL now or one of these, you know, professional league. That's what it's become. And it's all centered around football and it's all centered around money. And the people who lose are the student athletes. That's, I mean, and the fans. Those are the two groups who are going to lose from this. And I don't think it's going to mean as much from people. And I think that what you're getting is I think that what college sports is trying to do is appeal to casual people who want to watch USC and Ohio State possibly play, not the people who are diehards who actually liked living in Arizona and get to see USC play Arizona State every other year or whatever, or Oregon and Oregon State, like you said. You're not catering to your actual diehard fans, and I think that's really sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look where the people are in the country, and it's like there's a whole lot of them in New York and New Jersey. Most of those people don't care about college football.
Nope.
What if you could get them to?
Yep.
You know, what if you could get them to care about college football more regularly than they already do? And I think the business case for it, you can definitely
make sense,
understand and make the case. But like, we're talking about college sports. Like, it's been 3 years since we've been allowed to give players NIL money. Like, the whole idea of it now is so nakedly greedy.
Profit-driven.
And that, like, I'm not shaming anybody for trying to make money, but it's so naked now that you feel like a big part of what makes college athletics, like a big part of its soul, is probably at risk here.
A couple final questions here for you, Eamon. This one from Valerie. She says, lots of former NBA star players are coaching college teams with mixed success. Woody has NBA coaching experience. Does that give him a leg up over Juwan Howard and Penny Hardaway, the examples that she uses? Those two have been utterly unimpressive, but they'd still get star recruits. What gives?
Yeah. I mean, I just think Woodson's been a coach for a long time. You know, Juwan was like an NBA guy, but he wasn't an NBA. Was he an NBA head coach at any point? I don't know that he was.
Just an assistant.
Yeah, I think Woodson was just like a locked-in NBA journeyman coach for such a long time that he's just a coach now. He's not like an NBA figure. A lot of the NBA guys who came down because they couldn't get NBA head coaching jobs. You know, Patrick Ewing couldn't get an NBA head coaching job for 20 years. And then at Georgetown, we kind of found out why. You know, Chris Mullen, same deal. Bounced around a lot of front offices. Actually, Fred Hoiberg, at the start of his coaching career, went to Iowa State because he was a front office guy and he wanted to get into coaching. And he did a really nice job as a front office guy, scout, whatever, wanted to get into coaching, did a really nice job at Iowa State, and then was able to go be the Bulls head coach. But mostly that has not been the case. And these guys come down because, you know, with exceptions, and everybody's different. But yeah, I mean, Woodson he was a coach for like 30 years in the NBA. So he's just a coach at this point. And the fact of him being former NBA to college, whatever, I think matters a little bit less. I think, like I said earlier, I think it benefits him in that he's just cool with putting a roster together and trying to get the most out of it every year, because that's what you do in the NBA. You have continuity, but you're filling out on the margins with new guys and new styles of play and whatever. And he seems very comfortable in that mold.
Yeah, what's interesting is the recruitments he's been the most successful at have been transfers and those quick recruitments from decommits, which is kind of like NBA free agency. And that's actually kind of lined up perfectly with what he does. These long 2-year recruitments have not been where Indiana's.
Hopefully that starts to change.
Well, hopefully we all got our fingers crossed, but
yes.
We'll see.
All right, last question for you, Eamon. As you kind of look at the college basketball landscape for this season, what are some of the stories that you're most interested in, like outside of the Big Ten? What are maybe some teams, some figures, some stories that you're excited to see play out this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Purdue is the number one for me. We already mentioned that. Obviously, you said outside the Big Ten, but like they're the team that is most interesting to me. I think Connecticut's ongoing re-rise into being a national power under Danny Hurley is really interesting. I'm really interested.
Aren't they just going to go away for a few years and then win the national championship in 3 years out of nowhere? That's what UConn
with
does.
A different coach.
It's always possible. They do it with a journeyman coach or an interim head coach that they then fire 6 months later. But no, I think Hurley is probably there to stay unless they do something crazy in realignment and whatever. He just got a big new contract. I think he got a $30 million contract. I mean, Marquette is a very interesting team to me. Basically the same team as last year, and it's like, can you just do continuity? They have no transfers. I don't think they had any they might have had a couple fringe guys leave. They don't have anybody coming in. And Shaka is that's a selling point for him. He's very we're going to swerve on the whole transfer portal thing. I think that's interesting, particularly for coaches like we mentioned earlier, like Tony Bennett at Virginia, who would like to do that. Kansas, Hunter Dickinson. That's
all you got to say. That's
really Hunter Dickinson is going to be a very interesting player. I don't totally understand his desire to be seen as this bad boy type of dude. But he's going to be really good there, and Kansas is going to be really good. And it'll be, no slight on Juwan Howard. I think he put together a really good team, particularly Dickinson's freshman year, and coached them well. But seeing Dickinson play basketball for Bill Self is probably going to be a bit of a revelation, I would guess.
For
pretty much all those teams except for Marquette, Indiana's playing this season.
Oh, there you
UConn,
go.
Kansas, Purdue, obviously. So
it's a good schedule.
We'll get to see some of those teams up close. Well, hey, man, really appreciate you taking the time tonight. This was great, and hopefully we can have you on the show again in the future.
Yeah.
Let's remind folks to go subscribe to – it's just Buzzer. It's not The Buzzer, right? It's just Buzzer.
Lose Buzzer. The "it's" cleaner.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you. That's a good reference.
Yeah. And you can just go to it's eamonbrennan.com is my website that I
okay, that'll take you there.
To. So
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Or you can just Google my name and it comes up pretty high up. So
it's great, folks. Go follow it.
It is
cool.
It is great. Subscribe.
Hey, thanks
track
for coming,
Eamon stuff. Eamon, thanks so much for being here, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me,
buddy.
guys. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. The great Eamon Brennan. Everybody, go to eamonbrennan.com. Subscribe to Buzzer. It's good stuff. I've been subscribed since day one. I've enjoyed every issue so far.
All right,
awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
all right,
thanks,
later,
Eamon.
brother.
All right.
We love Eamon. He's a good dude.
We do love Eamon. Great perspective.
He only took 12 years of nagging, but he
yes. Yeah, I know.
Big
some
enough
people are
for him,
like,
yeah.
some people are like done with the Purdue talk, all that stuff. I know, but I mean,
Guys,
they are obviously an
that's-
interesting team, and
that's a national story this year. It's going to be a huge national story because they brought back the National Player of the Year. They lost in the first round of the tournament. Get used to seeing a lot of Purdue articles, folks. And then we can
hopefully
laugh.
they fall flat on their faces.
Yeah, we can laugh when they fall flat on their face. But going into the season, get ready for it. I said I put my foot there. I think Michigan State's going to win the Big Ten. I think there's just too much talent on that roster, and I think that they can. They're the one team that can probably manhandle Purdue physically. But Purdue's going to be a huge story this year, guys. They're going to be number one probably to start the season or close to it and be right there throughout the season, just like last year, except for it won't be a surprise. So
they probably won't have the easiest schedule in the conference this year to fatten up on.
Well,
so
you never know.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, who knows? But I'm with you. I tend to like Michigan State's pieces and balance a little bit better. But you know, the Big Ten I think is really interesting this year. You know, because I feel like Big Ten basketball is always better when you have kind of some clear top dogs. Obviously, we like for Indiana to be in that group. Not really this season, but you do kind of have those clear top dogs in Michigan State and Purdue, and then a whole bunch of interesting teams behind them. You know, I mean, you could make a case for 5 or 6 teams that could finish third I mean, you could credibly argue Maryland, Indiana, Wisconsin, Illinois, and I'm probably forgetting a couple others, that you could argue that could finish third. So it's going to be fascinating season. Any final thoughts from you, Ryan, before we wrap up here?
I'm glad that there weren't any negative stories about my college days, because he certainly could have broke some out. So, but no, I just, it's a flashback. When I saw him last year in San Diego, he was out here covering the opening round in San Diego, and we met up. We hadn't seen each other since 2007. Wow. So just to date ourselves. And we sat down. It was great to talk to him and, reminisce a little bit. And he's a great dude. And, the Athletic, I'm sorry to say for their sake, but they screwed up. And he is doing a fantastic job. Yeah, they did. And it's sad to see what's happening to that college basketball desk. But he's fantastic. And I think everybody should go subscribe. If you like college basketball, subscribe to that newsletter. That and the Assembly Call. That's all you need.
You know what's interesting, though? I mean, it's almost like, in a certain way, college sports are making a similar mistake to what the Athletic made, which is forgetting why people cared about them in the first place. People signed up for the Athletic because of the promise of really good local coverage, of the teams you cared about. And that was the thing. And they had their
high
super arrogant
quality. Yeah.
Yes. They had their super arrogant statements about how we're going to bleed all the local papers dry and all that stuff. And whatever, they're Silicon Valley arrogant guys. But if you deliver good local coverage, that's fine. Well, and then it's like they completely forgot about that mission and went in a totally different direction. And it's not the same. They've lost talent. I know they've lost subscribers. So it just,
soapbox moment here. Soapbox.
Go for it.
About this business that I am involved in. The problem we face is the shareholder problem, where you constantly have to be increasing profits, as opposed to the idea that if you break even and everybody's getting paid, including the CEO and the people at the top, you've done your job.
Yes.
As long as you're not losing money. And again, if you invest too heavily, as the Athletic reportedly did, you could lose some money, but then you sell to a company that has to appease shareholders. You wind up hurting yourself. If you can just exist with the amount of money you're making and incrementally increase your coverage, you can keep your whole staff together. You can get paid as the executive what your salary is and continue to have this for as long as you want. And selling out that way is so short-sighted, because guess who the first person's going to be to go when you sell that? It's going to be the highest priced people. And so the people at the top who make that decision are putting themselves essentially out of a job. And everybody thinks it's not going to be me. That won't happen to me. Well, yeah, it will. And so when you run a great publication that is slightly making money, but everybody's getting paid, why would you give that up? And the problem is the people who run
short-term money looks so good, man.
It looks so good. And guess what? The product dies in the end.
Illustrated.
And everybody thinks they're going to be the one to crack the code and it'll be different. And it never is. It winds up the same way every single time. Massive conglomerate.
Because of the perverse incentives that you're talking about. It's not about quality. It's not about serving the audience anymore. It's about hockey stick growth.
It's making one more buck than you did yesterday. That's all that matters. And your stock price going up a single dollar so everybody can get their bonuses. So,
I
think, I will say this before the future of media is going to be people like Eamon getting a solid backing of subscribers, creating good content and being paid for it.
Yes. And creating a nice lifestyle business for himself and serving his audience humbly like he does.
And what's going to happen is these big publications are going to lose all the good people and be left wondering why nobody wants to read their stuff. And so that's what's going to happen. And it's really sad, because you would wish that somebody would just wake the hell up and be like, no, I'm not going to sell. We're all happy right now. Why would I want to screw this up?
Yes.
And so eventually that's where media is going to go. Somebody's going to figure that out. There are right now a bunch of subscription level places that have low overhead, that produce a decent amount of revenue and are never going anywhere. And those are the places you should, and that seems like it's going to be the future.
100%. I mean, there are some industries where that kind of venture capital mindset makes some sense, and I get it. Journalism and media should not be one of them.
Not at all.
At all.
No.
Like, it's not only that it doesn't make sense, it's actually bad for society to have those things.
100%.
So.
Because when the quality falls off, it impacts everybody. When the quality of
Yes.
journalism and the quality of media coverage falls off, it impacts every aspect of life. And it's the kind of thing where it's almost like it should be a protected industry. Like, I mean, and again, as Americans, we are very reflexive against that for good reason. I understand it. But there are certain things that are precious, and we're allowing big money to ruin them. And that's healthcare is another, but we could get into that another time. But it is not here offline. But no, I think it's sad to watch some of these media places get rid of their best people because they're trying to drive down costs and bleed a dollar. And it's really a shame. And and honestly, in the end, they won't be rewarded for it. So that's my soapbox moment about the state of media and journalism.
So that email you sent earlier about how we needed to get rid of Andy and Coach so that you could have a higher
Jared,
salary,
that was in
are you-
confidence.
Oh,
I was thinking split it 2 ways instead of 4. But you know what? We got to appease the shareholders, Jared.
and we need bracketologists. I mean, if those two guys aren't here, and you and I have to preview teams or talk about bracketology,
We could get a cheaper,
gonna be a
younger
disaster.
bracketologist. Let's go. Let's go get that. Quality might not be as good, but we'll
let's
save so much
let's
money.
get one of the students from Delphi Bracketology.
There you
They'll do
go.
it for less money.
He'll do it for nothing. Again, quality not as good, but who cares? It's more money.
Let's save some dough.
Yeah. Well, that was fun.
That was fun. All right.
Andy
that
and
is
Coach
gonna-
are gonna get text right now. They're like, wait, what?
That'll do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, you can join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thank you, as always, to Bob Thompson for producing our music. Thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next Thursday to talk IU hoops again with you. Until then,
Take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
bam. Good stuff, man. Coach,
was
we'd
good.
never let you go.
No, of course not. Younger,
Never.
I'm teasing.
I need someone else who can host.
Yeah, seriously.
If anybody's going, it's the people who don't host the show.
Wait a minute.
By the way, big props to Bob Thompson and John Ringer. I just launched another a new podcast with my business partner. It's called Longevity Gains. If anybody is interested in learning marketing strategies for businesses or marketers who are targeting the ever-increasing older population in the United States, it's a really interesting show, actually. It's called Longevity Gains. But Bob Thompson did our music. John Ringer did our logo and our show art. So I was very excited to be able to bring a little bit of assembly call flavor over to that show. Those guys did a great job. So if you want to hear some new Bob Thompson music, go check out Longevity Gains, which is going to be an interesting, fun show.
That's the whole reason I'd listen.
For Bob, just turn it off after the
Come on
Bob's
now.
music is on there.
I was gonna say, yeah. What are we doing next week? Do we have anything planned for next week's show yet?
All right, so let's see. Next week, nothing is planned. The week after that, Connor from Home Field is going to be on with
Right,
us.
I knew that. Yeah.
But no, next week we have nothing. So I imagine we'll
Which is
probably talk some
typical.
recruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine we'll probably
Previewing
talk
the
some
recruiting.
recruiting. And also, okay, so I know that we had mentioned like potentially doing an event the second weekend in September at Upstairs.
It's a little
It's
late
not.
for me.
Well, yeah. So you and I aren't going to do it, but I think Galen actually is going to do something.
That'd be awesome.
And I think Coach is going to join him. I think some friends like Griffin Gonzalez and some other people are.
Can we
gonna be
call
there.
in?
Yeah, I don't
might
know.
be
We'll have
too
to
hard.
see. Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to try and get kind of like a headliner, like a player or somebody, and schedules just didn't really work out with it. But that's fine.
I have a
We love
question,
Galen, and so we'll get you the details for that when it happens. And maybe I shouldn't say anything because I don't know if it's like firm
Set
in stone. But we'll let you know as soon as possible.
I have a question,
but yeah,
Jared.
that may actually happen. Yes.
Are there any chances you could go another weekend in the fall?
Oh, this year? I don't know.
Okay. I'm in Italy from October 3rd to the 17th, but I've always loved the idea of doing a basketball preview show.
I know. I have too. I know. It gets
It's just
a little
hard
tricky.
to do. It's just hard to
I know.
do. But this year we will be doing a show when we do the meetup in
Yes.
February-ish. We're not
Yeah.
skipping that this year.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do a post-game show. I think we may. I think that worked well last year doing the post-game show separate, but then maybe we'll come and do some kind of discussion or have a player there or do something. Because I think it works better that way.
Well, my idea would be have somebody, one of our peripheral groups, do a post-game show, and then have us do a live show of some kind.
Yes,
right
some
after
kind.
the game.
Yes.
Because the thing is, I think that doing our actual full post-game show was actually not a good idea live, because it's long and people want to hang out. And so I was thinking the idea I would like is like have us do 20 minutes, have Crimson Cast do 20 minutes, like kind of get everybody to do a little something.
Just talk about the game, maybe take some questions, a little more freewheeling and fun, and not
the raffle and giveaway stuff was really fun too. I would love to do that again. And by the way, this is a conversation we should probably be having in private, but you know what?
It's all right. These are our people. Whoever's listening now, they're our core audience. They can be in on all these conversations.
This counts as After Dark.
It's all good. This definitely counts as After Dark. Absolutely. All right. So you got everything's starting up for you, man. NFL season's happening. Things are going to start getting busy.
Starts next or a week from tonight. Yeah. And I'm going to be miserable for about the next 6 months, folks. So don't try and look me up. But no, it's fun. I'm actually excited. It's funny. I never learned my lesson, but when football rolls around, I'm always like, all right, this is going to be a great year. We're good. There's good storylines, blah, blah, blah. But when I go to bed the night of the Super Bowl, because Super Bowl is a noon to 1 a.m. night for me, and that's West Coast time. Like that's the day. And I wake up the next morning and I'm like, I don't want to think about football again for 6 months, because it is your entire life. When you cover everything the way we do, it's football for 8 months, 7 months, something like that. And so, I
couldn't do that.
Well, when I worked at Bleacher
I can
Report,
hyper focus on basketball. I did that for a little bit with Midwest sports fans, and I just don't like football enough to do it.
Yeah, well, and even basketball, I think writing as much as I have to write, you do burn out on whatever you're doing. I don't know how people are beat writers for teams. I'm sure it's a passion and a level of commitment that to that thing that I don't think I would ever have. And that's why you see beat writers sometimes, if they're in a city with multiple sports teams, after a few years, they change to the other sports team. Because how many times can you write the same story? But when I was working for Bleacher Report and we had to write, 7 to 8 articles a day, and I was on the NFL team. I remember at the end of my first year doing that, I asked them, like, can you put me on any other sport, please? Just not football. And then they were like, well, do you want to be one of the guys in charge of the football department? I was like, do I have to write 8 articles a day? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. It was just like anything else right now. Please, God, put me on bowling. I don't care. So it is a lot. It's you try and throw things in for variety and mix it up. But yeah, it's starting next Thursday. My life will be the NFL for quite some time.
Keep writing your thoughts, everybody.
Yeah, seriously, I have the hardest job in the world, folks. It's terrible. Weep for me at night. No, look, we all have things about our jobs that are tough. Come on, it's
no, totally.
But yeah, no, I mean, and look, I love writing about football. Don't get me wrong. It's just that after a while, it becomes everything, and it's just like it's like people who do whatever they do, and as soon as like the busy season's done, they go on vacation for 3 weeks or whatever. Like that's exactly what it is for the NFL for me. The rest of the year,
I love doing this, but once the season's over, it's nice
tough.
to not have it's not take a break. You got to have seasons.
I mean, we do. There are times we're doing 4 shows a week, and it's tough.
It's fun. There's adrenaline, and it's it's exciting. But it's
we
like
love
anything.
it, or we wouldn't do it. But like it is,
you need a break from it.
Yeah.
You need a break from it.
Yeah, I'm actually getting
That's
excited.
for sure.
Over the middle of the summer, like June, early July, you kind of hit a lull with this. But leading up to this, I'm starting to actually get excited. By the way, I did the trivia thing. You would have beat me by 1.
That's it. Really?
I played
Wow.
it back. Yeah, you would have beat me
Okay.
by 1.
Nice.
And 2 of the ones I answered, one I got right, one I got wrong, were I guessed, but the other answer I had. So the one I guessed on would have been wrong. The one I got right would have been wrong with my instinct, and the other one, my instinct was right, and I guessed wrong. So would have been close. It would have been a good one. We'll have to do it again.
Do we believe him?
No, I mean,
Probably.
some of the stuff
Now,
like
you have a good memory, so that does not surprise me.
I do, and some of the old school stuff just happened to be stuff I knew. It was like the last time they made the Sweet 16 back-to-back years. I knew that because you guys have talked about it. It was the 92, 93, 93, 94.
93, 94.
Yeah, yep. And some of those have just been I picked it up over the years, not because I actually like know it, or know the storylines. But yeah, no, I did pretty well. One of them was the 3-point percentage one, and none of you guys got it. And it was Matt Roth. I was like, "How do you not remember
I had
that?"
Such a
it was like the one
one.
remarkable, it was the one remarkable thing about that team.
I know.
But yeah, it was just one of those where like I knew that instantly, but I got all the answers you guys listed. I'm like, I could see that. So
yeah, that was fun. We got to do that again.
It was a blast. Chris
did an awesome job.
Yeah,
he's the best, man.
We'll do another one at some point.
We will. All right. Well, everybody, let's cheer on our Hoosiers on Saturday. I have no idea what to expect. Can't say my expectations are that high, but let's watch them and let's hope it's better than we think. And then let's hope for some good recruiting news here as we move forward in September and October.
And cheer on Michael Penix except for when he plays USC. So there you go.
I will be cheering on Michael Penix at all times. I am definitely a Washington fan this year. I love Michael Penix.
Cool. We can talk trash that one Saturday this year.
Yeah. And that great, it's just a huge battle between Big Ten foes.
It's a Big Ten rivalry, man. Like
Washington face off. So
by the way, how
ridiculous.
dumb is it that the ACC is trying to get Stanford to Cal? Like, why is the Big Ten not doing that? It's the Bay Area.
I don't know.
It makes no sense. Like, who else is the Big Ten going to add? They have to add 2 more.
I don't know.
Go to the ACC for like Clemson, so you have the South Carolina market or the North Carolina market with UNC. Like, it makes no sense. They already have DC. They don't need Virginia. Like, I don't know. None of this makes sense.
All right,
guys.
Well, have a great one. See y'all inside the community, and see you next Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.